Shudo. Aye. That said, you're welcome if you're an old, if you're a subscribed member, thank you for subscribing and thank you for joining. If you are a new member, you're welcome. This podcast is about the Bible in 1 year, Genesis to Revelation, where we go through the Bible stories and I retell it, lace it with Nigerian humor, and basically share insights if I feel like it's necessary to share insights. And then the idea is that if you want to read through the Bible in 1 year, if you follow this podcast, you get to read it from beginning to the end every single day. So we follow a structured guide from this daily Bible reading guide from the Family Ministries International. And I leave the scriptures that we read in the description box below. I don't put a lot of write-up, it's just there. So if someone is looking for it, every single day, you'll find the scriptures for the day. I chose to do this because I want to know God more. And I don't want to do this alone. I did this alone before. I felt like it was so transforming. So I thought I should do this with an audience, people who are curious, who want this, and who would like to follow along as well. So please subscribe to the channel if you are interested. Today is day 229 and we have 136 days to go. So we're making great progress. It's not been easy. I really should break down some of the challenges and difficulties I've had behind the scenes to make sure that every single episode is brought. And I wanted to do these things without any, I try not to, I share my own stories and stuff, but I try not to. This is purely about reading the Bible from cover to cover. I'm not trying to okay, let me just stop that and stop rambling. So today we're rounding up Nehemiah. We're looking at Nehemiah chapters 12 and 13, and that ends the book of Nehemiah. As well as we're still right in the middle. We're looking at 1 Corinthians chapters 11, and we're looking at Proverbs 21, 17 to 18. So we're done with the book of Psalms. We're done with the book of Psalms. So I just want to quickly, why did I shut this? What was I thinking? 21. Let's start with Proverbs today because it's just 2 scriptures and we're good. And I just read them. So Proverbs 17. He who loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. The wicked, verse 18, the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous. And the unfaithful shall be a ransom. The unfaithful for the upright. So that's our Proverbs today. So Nehemiah chapters 12 and 13, let's quickly get to it. I see you guys. And thank you for joining me. Please subscribe if you are interested in knowing more about the Bible. We're reading through the Bible in 1 year. Okay, so Nehemiah 12 and 13. Once the wall was dedicated, the Levites were brought in to handle the singing and dedication. So music was a very important part of the Bible. Dedication and thanksgiving. They purified themselves and the leaders were appointed for the left and right side. So the sheep gate was on the left side, the refuse gate was on the right side, and Nehemiah and the choir all stood before God. Thank you for liking. I see that. Kichu, I see you. All right, so choirs all stood before God, making great sacrifices and rejoicing so much. So how many of you guys have watched Trolls? Is this musical animation? I really, really like it. I think it's something I'm going to be watching for a long time because I really enjoy it. So do you remember when the trolls had to hide because they were being eaten by the monsters? I forget what the monsters are called now. But those little trolls had to hide because they were being eaten by the monsters. And then they still couldn't help themselves. They had to party and make the party biggest and louder and more until the people who were the monsters who were trying to eat them heard the sound and like, these trolls are hiding here. So I'm assuming that that's how this Israelite party was. Louder, bigger. Anyway, they said here in the scriptures that the singing and partying could be heard from afar, right? So appointments for the storehouse were made. Storehouses were where the first fruits, offerings, tithe, and the entire distributions were kept. And so the appointments of who would be in charge was a big deal, and they were done. During Zerubbabel's days and Nehemiah, everybody got what was due them. I guess that was because a time would come where people would be denied what was due them. The reading of the book of the law showed that Moabites and Ammonites were not welcome in the assembly of the Jews because they hired Balaam, an old sorcerer. Back in Exodus, when we read it, they hired Balaam, an old sorcerer, to curse them. Unfortunately, God scrambled the curse into a blessing. So by law, the mixed multitude had to be separated. You know that people are just coming in from exile, right? We're getting to the point of people beginning to come in from exile. There was a massive mixed multitude, all sorts of people. They had to be separated. Tobiah was previously in charge of the storeroom. Remember Tobiah? The guy who was fighting them and stopping them from building. Tobiah is one of those obnoxious guys who flaunts his connections more than the person he's claiming he's connected to. Those kinds of people. So Tobiah was in charge of the storehouses where grain, frankincense, and was this tithe? Leaf? I'm not sure what I wrote here. Wine and oil were kept. At this time, Nehemiah had returned back to King Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, King Xerxes, Artaxerxes, where he was working. Remember, he took a sabbatical to come and help the Jews build, right? So he had returned back to this place. And Tobiah was even given a room, a special room. That greedy man. And a large room was prepared for Tobiah where he probably, I don't know, maybe he had access to he had like special, he was just a greedy man. He didn't support them, and now he was taking advantage of them. Nehemiah came back. Nehemiah heard that Tobias was staying in a large room had been given to Tobias. He was super upset, that a room was prepared for Tobias in God's court. So I think Tobias had a place where he was staying so that he could live close by and monitor. Those people that never want to contribute to anything, but they quick, and I've experienced it before. I will not really tell the stories as such, but back in the day, people who don't want to contribute to building, but the moment the thing is built, they come in and then they ask you for favors. They say, "Oh, please, would like you to give us," and they try to blackmail you into saying, "Oh, because God has blessed you, you have been unkind, you don't want to give us," but they didn't want any. They were even trying to put you down like Tobias. That's what Tobias was trying to do. Now he wants a room beside the storehouse so that he could monitor, because the Jews were very rich. Can you imagine? Anyway, and that storehouse was in the house of God. So how dare he believe in the house of God? How dare he? So Nehemiah was super upset that Tobias was given a cut in the house of God. The Levites had returned back to farming. Why? Because Tobias had taken over all of those things, as their items had been diverted. Tobias' things were flung out by Nehemiah, and the room reconsecrated. Nehemiah scolded the leaders and appointed new leaders. Zadok the scribe and Shemaiah the priest resumed and started receiving tithes and offering and keeping them in the storehouse again. I'm like, these people, how long did this last? Why are they not able to discipline themselves and just stick to the plan? Like every single time something happens, they easily get distracted, easily get bullied, easily, like they have a mindset problem. They will just easily be bullied and they'll just cower, just go, and then the whole thing will fall apart. Like, it's really, really something else. Anyway, Nehemiah prayed that God will not forget all the good that he had done. The people were trading on the Sabbath. He was like, "God, please do not forget what we had done." So part of his prayer was, I told you that whenever they wanted to pray, they would start reciting their history, possibly like just telling God, we know where we are. So he was saying things like, "Lord God, we are sorry. We have started trading again on the Sabbath. God did not punish us. Did God not punish us for all of this? Why? So God, please forgive us and please see the good that we're trying to do and please, reward it," that sort of thing. He posted servants to shut the gates before Sabbath. So he was like, people had started selling on the Sabbath day. And that was another, Sabbath day was in the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments. It wasn't like one of the laws that came later. So he said, lock the doors on Sabbath day. Stop trading with outsiders, and you outsiders, stop trading with people. You can pack house and wait until Monday, but not today. But not today, okay? So stop the trading by people who hung around the wall. Children of Israelites were speaking Moab language, Ammonite language, Ashdod language. That's Ashdod were Philistine language, because of intermarriages. A lot of intermarriage had taken place. Nehemiah cursed, struck, pulled their hair. Like he became angry enough to even like physically begin to punish them. You know, he struck some, he cursed some, he pulled their hair some, he yelled at many. He was just berserk, like he was angry. You people, what are you still doing? What's wrong with you? Anyway, he really went angry. Solomon sinned by these things, guys. Despite how much Solomon was loved, didn't you see what happened to Solomon? He couldn't, no matter how wise Solomon was, he couldn't even withstand. Hello, Joseph, how are you today? I see you from Kenya. Solomon, he said, pagan women, they ruined him. They ruined him. So this thing you guys are doing, thinking you can handle it, you can't. If someone like Solomon couldn't handle it, you guys can't. You know. So Nehemiah. So let me back up a bit so that I don't miss my thoughts. Even high priests, even the high priests, like people who should know better, were all married. In fact, the high priest married Sanballat's daughter. Do you know who Sanballat is? So let's back it up a bit. Sanballat, Tobias, and Geshem were the main culprits who were fighting against the Jews re-establishing themselves. And now you are giving your child in marriage to them. Sanballat's daughter, Nehemiah sent the priest away. Go and stay with Sanballat. You can't walk in the house of the Lord. He cleansed all things pagan, completely removing all things pagan from the temple, and prayed to be remembered for good. And that's where the story of Nehemiah ends. He probably was checking up on them time and time again until his time came for him to go be with God. So I wrote here in my notes that diasporans, we in Africa, we have a lot of people in diaspora, because our people tend to want to move to the developed nations, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that. The earth is a lot, and the fullness that we can go anywhere we like, you know. And I noticed something: diasporans take things that happen back home more seriously than people who are home. I don't know if that's your experience, Joseph. If you think that people who are in diaspora take things that happen back home more seriously than people who are at home. So this is Nehemiah in diaspora from Shushan, taking what is going on in Jerusalem so seriously, taking sabbatical time off to come and build. Yet, despite how much effort he had made to bring it to life, these people were still acting, they couldn't lead themselves, even the high priest, you know. So I wrote down here, they take cultural and tribal laws more seriously than people back home. So that brings an end to Nehemiah. This has been a long reading. So let me quickly, I'm glad that our Corinthians is not long. So just hang in there, we're almost done. Corinthians chapter 13, verses 3 to 16. So Paul continues, Christ is the head of man, and man of woman, and God of Christ. Christ is the head of, so God is the head of man, man is the head of woman, woman is the head of, God is the head of Christ, Christ is the head of man, man the head of woman. That's what Paul is saying here. And you see this statement, it's supposed to be taken in context of leading and caring for, and not bullying, as many people have. This is me putting my thoughts now. Many people have made it so difficult to follow, you know, to follow. It's abused. Just like you see the Jews abusing the privileges that they have, that's how the privileges of men over women are abused all the time. Anyway, that's not the conversation for today. Praying men who cover, a praying man who, so Paul, this Corinthians 11 is a very controversial portion of scripture. Let me just stick to it. Praying men who cover their heads dishonor God. At the same time, a praying woman who uncovers her head dishonors God. Kukuma cut the hair. So kukuma kukuma means just go ahead and it's a word in Hausa. It's a word in Hausa. Kukuma cut the hair. If you won't cover the hair, then kukuma cut it. You know. But if it's shameful for a woman to cut her hair, if it's shameful for her to have short hair, then let her cover the hair. So what happens to people in Kenya? I mean, Joseph, you're here. I don't know if you're still here. What happens to people? I visited Kenya some time back, and I noticed that they wore short hair. I went to Masai Mara. I saw that they wore short hair. So if the gospel went to them, would they insist that the women in Masai Mara should grow their hair and the men should cut it? No. So I always say, if you read the Bible, read it in context. Read it in context. Men need not, let her cover it. Man need not, for he is, a man need not cover his head, for he is in the image of God. A woman isn't. She is in the image and the glory of man, because she was created for man and not man for her. Okay, so that would be a controversial, or that would be a touchy subject today in Christendom. Even for me, I don't pretend like I've accepted. Like, okay, how do I put this now without sounding like I'm looking for trouble? I feel like there was a lot of context where Paul was addressing these matters. And we're not told that Paul came to Nigeria or Paul came to Africa. So I don't know how he would have insisted on some of this was mostly Europe, yeah. How he would have insisted on some of these things. I know that covering the hair was mostly like an old thing, especially in Europe and Middle East, but if you look back in Africa, it wasn't a thing. Some tribes, the men even wore hair, like in the Masai Mara, and the women shave their hair because they follow what they think the animals, the lions have manes, the female lions don't. Anyway, she ought to have a symbol of authority. A woman has to have the symbol of authority because, I wrote here, or else what? Because of angels. So I guess women were seen back in the day as objects that could just be snatched at will. They were seen back in the day as human beings that they could just possess for their own aggrandizement. So in order to show that you belong to somebody, if you cover your hair, the person who wants to snatch you up will know that you belong to somebody. So if you went around looking beautiful without your hair covered, then they would feel like you were free. You know, I have a lot, like, this is not enough. I don't like it. I don't like the scripture. I don't like it. I don't like what they're saying. I don't like it. I don't believe it. I believe that Paul was maybe trying to help, but in different contexts, this would be different. This would be different. In my own country, Nigeria, women do tie their hair. We cover our hair. We wear what's called gele. We tie it, flamboyantly, and every tribe I know, we cover our hair. So this is a symbol of style and prestige. You understand? A symbol of style and prestige. So back in the day, I don't, now that we're saying so, I don't really know the origin for why we all cover our hair, but it's a thing, and it makes us look really beautiful. It does. But when they say things like, when Paul says things like, I feel like Paul sometimes was bringing in cultural practices that were not very familiar to them, and he needed to enforce it so that there's a uniformity across the churches that he was building. I want to know what Apollos was doing. I want to know what Peter were doing. I want to know what John did. In the churches they planted, what were the laws that they instituted? Anyway, the churches that Paul planted in the Gentile world became the churches that spread around the world, and everything took root from that. So even though I don't like it, I don't always like everything I see and read in the Bible, I kind of like understand that there's a reason for it, and it's there for guidance, reproof, and all of that. Okay. Anyway, neither man nor woman is independent of each other in the Lord. The man came from woman, and woman came from man, and all things came from God. Judge, I'm not sure what I judge now. Should she? Okay, so you judge for yourselves. Should she pray with her head open? Just like should a man have long hair? Doesn't it go against doesn't it glorify a woman to have long hair and dishonor a man to have long doesn't it glorify a woman to have long hair and dishonor a man? And of course vice versa. Even nature teaches it that long hair is a covering. So if we have long hair, why are we still covering it? If a woman doesn't want to cover her hair, she should shave the hair. Let everything be exposed. That's what Paul was saying here. So if I expose my hair, can I go around without covering it in church? That's food for thought, right? Doesn't it glorify a woman to have long hair and dishonor a man to have long hair? Even nature teaches that her long hair is her covering. If anyone is contentious, we have no such custom nor do the churches of God. So people were contentious then, people are contentious now. Paul brought up a very touchy subject and people argued that, Paul said you don't need to be circumcised. It's the culture of the Jews and it's God's laws with the Jews, in spite of the fact that it's God. However, when it comes to covering of hair, he makes it a universal thing. Why is he doing that? He writes here, if anyone is in contention, we have no such custom, or nor do the churches of God, where Paul used to have long hair. Paul used to have long hair. And then he eventually cut the hair many, many years later and then began to teach that, look, don't have long hair. But there's some people who have long hair no matter what. So that brings us to an end of the Bible reading for today. Thank you for joining me. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'd love to banter with you whenever we're reading the scriptures. I'm still going to be shooting some episodes because we have a bit of a backlog. So if you're not doing anything, please continue enjoying me, and I'll see you in the next episode. This has been episode 229. God bless you.